Hey friends, welcome back. So for those of you who don't know, I used to be in over $120,000 of student loan debt, and on top of all that, I was a full-blown shopaholic. It was not a good combination. I spent a huge part of my early adult life worrying about money, thinking that I did everything right, and doing all the things that I thought I was supposed to do that would make me successful and a person who had their shit together. That means I did things like go to school and get the job, which took acquiring a whole bunch of debt to do it, landing that career where everyone's like, oh wow, she's smart, she knows what she's doing. I'm a pharmacist. People kind of like to go, oh wow, impressive, you must make good money. And then I started to do things that I thought meant I was successful, like chasing after things and brands that would signal my success to others without having to say anything, going on all the vacations, and making sure I documented it all on Instagram, because if you didn't take the photo, then how would they know? But behind that facade of success, I had a very toxic relationship with myself and with my money. About 3.5 years ago, I committed to going on a debt-free journey, and along that way, it really transformed my relationship with my finances and with myself.
Uh-huh! Aw, $20. I wanted a peanut. $20 can buy many peanuts. Explain how. Money can be exchanged for goods and services. Woohoo!
Nowadays, I am completely debt-free. I'm doing things like saving, investing, even learning how to spend some money guilt-free. And what that ultimately took was healing. So in today's video, I want to share with you 10 ways that I was able to heal my relationship with my money. Because yeah, a lot of my problem was a math problem for sure, but the bigger problem that I realized I had was a behavior problem and an attitude problem. And I didn't start to see any significant change in myself and in my money until I started addressing these issues. For those of you who don't know me, welcome. My name's Christina. I talk about things like intentional living, intentional spending, and how to get the most of what you've already got at home. If any of that sounds interesting to you, then please go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. It is the best way that you can help support my channel. I would love that so much. And if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. Sorry, I forgot to turn my mic on, so from here on out the sound will be a lot better, but I hope I kept you in for that intro. The first thing I had to do in order to start my healing journey with money and ultimately with myself was to practice radical honesty. And what that ultimately means is that I had to get real with myself. I didn't know that I was practicing radical honesty when I started this journey, and it's a term that I heard in the book Dopamine Nation. It is a fantastic book if you feel like you struggle with addictive behaviors, kind of anything that you see as a vice and a repetitive behavior in your life. That book was a game changer. But what radical honesty does is it promotes a sense of awareness of the problem, awareness of certain behaviors, and awareness of the mindset and maybe approach that we have around that issue. For me, I had to get real with myself in terms of how much debt I had, how I was spending my money at the time, which was basically putting it in all the wrong places, and just thinking that things would just somehow work themselves out. And of course, that's not to discount things that we can't really control, like systemic issues and certain life circumstances. For me, myself, I had a lot of privilege and I could take a lot of responsibility and action against the things that I was doing. But the first thing that took for me to start to change all of that was to be radically honest with myself. I had to take a good look in the mirror and see that the problem was staring back at me. And once I did acknowledge that, that's when true and real change started to happen for me and could happen. Number 2 was when I started budgeting. Before I committed to becoming debt-free, I had no idea where my money was going. I always just kind of knew where it went and always just sort of relied on the idea that things would work out. And looking back on that, no wonder I was stressed. And I used to just think that budgeting wasn't for me. I'm not a money person, so why should I have to do that? That's for smart people, that's for savvy people, that's not for me. I almost didn't think that I deserved to learn about it and to have control over it, and I think a lot of that just came from a scarcity mindset and my own relationship with myself. And it turns out that budgeting and actually learning how to do it started the healing process for me and those assumptions that I had about myself. I had to do things like doing a spending analysis, looking back at the past 3 to 6 months of my spending to see exactly what my bills were, what my student loan payment was, how much my rent was, and how much I was spending on things like clothes and makeup every single month. And in doing that, it was also a form of radical honesty, because when you look at your statements, it's really facing your own behavior. It's basically leaving like little breadcrumbs of what you like to do, even your emotional states, and ultimately those numbers don't lie. And it started to heal my relationship with money because I could prove to myself that I could do it. And I started to see things like progress on my debt and, more importantly, just an increased awareness of where my money was going and why. It's a tool that I use every single month to plan for my spending, including guilt-free and fun spending nowadays. It's how I can use my money as a tool to reach my goals and create things like a safety net and security in my own life. And it's truly one of the ways that I can stay aware and intentional about my money now. So if you are intimidated by budgeting or just think it's not for you, just give it a try. Do it for a month, 2 months, and I think you'll start to build the confidence that you may not have known was there before. Number 3 was tracking my spending. So budgeting truly is only half the battle. If you did create a budget or some kind of spending plan, I will leave a few free options down below that you can try out yourself. There's different ways to budget, so just pick the method that you're actually going to stick to. And it's in the tracking that you can actually see if you're sticking to it, and it'll tell you where you may need to make adjustments. I used to literally track every dollar that I spent as soon as I spent it, so if I went and got a coffee at the coffee shop, within 30 minutes of making the transaction, I would enter it into my budget. I'm definitely not as intense as I used to be with how I track and how I budget. But when I was really deep in my debt-free journey, I felt like I had to do that so that I could really make sure that I was sticking to that goal of becoming debt-free. And tracking my spending also just helped me create an awareness of where I like to spend my money. A lot of times, the things we enjoy are tied very closely to money in some way. Even if the activity you're doing is free, maybe you had to drive to get there, and so the gas money that you spend is tied to that activity. And when I was getting out of debt and working on my relationship with myself and my money, I almost had to relearn what it was that I enjoyed. And it was through tracking my spending that I could kind of see that. Like, I wasn't willing to cut out going for coffee or going to the occasional restaurant while I was getting out of debt, and my budget and my statements would show that. Whereas before, you can see that I thought I valued things like clothes and makeup, which I still do value now, but you could really see that the majority of my money was going there. So tracking your spending really reveals your behavior, it reveals what you like to do, and it can reveal a lot about yourself on paper. And when you know that, you can make adjustments and self-reflections as you go. The 4th way I was able to heal my relationship with my money was by having a tangible money goal. When I got really serious about paying off my student loan debt, I had about $85,000 left of the balance. In total, I was in over $120,000 of student loan debt, but for the first 4-ish years, I was really just sort of sauntering along, and I wasn't taking it seriously and almost just treated it as a normal part of life. Everybody has debt, this is just the way it is. Something clicked in me one day where I just didn't want to live the way I was living anymore, and I knew that the way I was spending my money, coupled with my debt, were both a huge part of my problem. And I treated getting out of debt as almost a do or die situation. I was able to pay off that final chunk in about 2.5 years, and I was able to do that with a focused intensity because it was a new goal that I had. And I started changing my behavior and my relationship with money, and even found ways to make more money to pay off that debt faster. And it doesn't have to be something as grandiose as getting out of debt. It could simply be creating a goal to save for a fancy bag that you want to buy, or to be able to go on a vacation this year. But the key for me was having a goal and having a why. I did things like envision what my life would be like being debt-free. And if it's something like a vacation, you can envision things like how you're gonna fly there. Are you gonna fly direct? What restaurants are you gonna be going to? What outfits are you wearing when you're there? Who's gonna be with you? What memories are you gonna be making? So whether your money goal is big or small, if it's something that's important to you, then you're going to make the moves to make it happen. And it's within that process that you can really change your relationship with money and prove to yourself that you can do it. For me, it's done things like build confidence, build surety in myself, and the reward is there at the end. It's pretty cool. Number 5 was a big one, and it was that I stopped blaming others for my financial mess. I used to love to play the victim. I'm just gonna go out there and say it. I used to blame it on things like living in Toronto, which, look, I understand today it's very, very expensive. We're in a cost of living crisis. It's very, very hard for very many people out there today. I had the financial resources, I had the privileges, the education, the access. I had a lot of things available to me that I just either didn't recognize or just refused to acknowledge, and decided to blame everything I possibly could but myself for my own financial problems. I was lucky and I had it really good, but I just refused to acknowledge any of that. It did things like affect my relationship with myself and affected my relationship with others. I had zero gratitude for anything in my life. And I had this mindset where the grass was always greener. If I just had this, then all my problems would be solved. If I just made this much more money, then everything would be fine. But at the same time, I was doing nothing to change that. When I started to recognize that I was both the problem and the solution, that's when things really started to turn around for me. Number 6 was that I found ways to earn more money. Yes, mercilessly cutting things from my budget to reach my goal, because I was spending a lot of money on that I didn't need. I'm the first to admit that. But I did really want to accelerate that process, so I did things like take extra pharmacy relief shifts, I worked overtime, and I was also able to earn more money by doing things like YouTube and social media on the side. All of those things in combination really did help me reach my goal. And I'm gonna be real here and say this, that earning more money did help me feel more secure. I do feel more healed and less scarce about money most of the time because I simply make more of it, and in large part because I am debt-free. I just don't have a lot of the worries that I used to have, and both of those things in combination really did help. And there's a little bit more I wanna say about this and a scarcity mindset, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Number 7 was embracing what I truly love to spend money on. This is essentially being unapologetic about what you like. I spent a lot of time truly being ashamed of myself in the fact that I like clothes and spending money on things like clothes. A lot of people will look at that as something being very frivolous and almost like an empty kind of interest, like not very virtuous. Like really I should be valuing things like traveling or doing something that society deems just better. But what I'm learning about money is that yes, it's a tool to build up your future, but it's also a tool that you can use to live right now. Life is kind of too short to feel guilty about what you enjoy spending money on. So whether that be things like hobbies, collecting things, going thrifting, travel, making things, cooking, you really shouldn't feel guilty about spending money on the things you enjoy. Money can be used as a tool to do that. And for a long time, I thought because there was no honor or virtue in the things that I enjoyed, that I shouldn't be wanting to spend my money there, and it was a bad thing. And it created a really toxic and guilty relationship with my money and with myself. And I had to do a lot of work to unpack that and just figure out where that was coming from within myself and why I felt like I didn't deserve that. And the truth is, if you are planning out your spending, if you have awareness about your spending, then why not spend money on the things you enjoy? At the end of the day, it's your money, it's your life, and it's really up to you to decide what enriches it and what doesn't. Number 8 was learning to be frugal, but not cheap. I'm not gonna come on here and say you need to cut out Starbucks from your life, and the reason that you're broke is because you have a Netflix account. I truly believe in the idea of spending in the places where you see value, guilt-free, just like we talked about in the last point, but that also means saving money on the things you don't care about. For many of us, money is a finite resource. We don't necessarily have enough money to do it all. So that means you really have to be sort of discerning about where you want to spend your money. So for me, I do like to spend money guilt-free on things like clothing, fitness, and really good food. But I've also been driving the same car since 2007. Oh no, my light died behind me. Shit. Oh well, sorry. I live in a older building that may not be as aesthetic or have the amenities that many new modern buildings do, but it means that my rent is a whole lot cheaper. So I choose to sacrifice some of my spending in certain categories of my life in favor of spending that money somewhere else that I actually care about. If my money had to be diverted to places like a car payment, a mortgage that I couldn't afford, or things like really expensive rent, a lot of that money would be eaten up, and then I wouldn't be able to necessarily save for things like vacation, or that also might be where I'd feel guilty about spending on that latte. But this really helped me heal my relationship with money in many ways, and it really just showed me what I care about versus what I don't. And that's gonna be an individual decision for everybody. Number 9 is consistency. The thing about having a good relationship with money is that it needs to be a habit. Like, as soon as I got out of debt, it didn't mean that I was allowed to go back to my old spending habits. Otherwise, I would just end up right back where I started. And all of the work that I did would have been meaningless. It meant that I had to consistently repeat behaviors, patterns, and automations that I had to maintain in order to continue seeing progress with my money and my goals, and also to prevent me from ending up right back where I started. I've really embraced things like automation. So for example, every time I get paid, I have money that goes straight into my investments, into savings, and I even have my bills set up so that they're paid automatically and I don't really have to think about them. I still also budget every single month. I track my spending every month. And it's that consistent behavior that helps me keep my relationship with money healthy, because I know I'm doing the things I need to do to keep me safe and in a positive relationship with money. And number 10 finally was unlearning a scarcity mindset. This is something that I'm still working on, and I don't necessarily think it comes with earning more money, because sometimes I still struggle with the idea that this could all be taken away from me any second. I used to tell myself things like, oh, if I just made this amount of money a year, then I wouldn't have to worry about money and all of that fear would go away. And that's not actually the case, which is why it does take a lot of work with yourself and your relationship and your assumptions about money in order to have a better relationship with it, and not necessarily just earning more. That's why you hear things about like multimillionaires still couponing for strawberries. I think it really goes back to our past experiences with money, things that we've been told about money growing up, and focusing on things like fear and what ifs rather than on things like gratitude and just being excited about what you can do with your money. For me now, it's really reframing how I can use my money as a tool to make my life better and to live the life that I envision and that I'm learning to feel like I actually deserve. And by the way, if you guys do want to learn more about where I'm getting this from and how I'm learning this, it's all from Ramit Sethi and the book I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Doing a lot of the work that he talks about in his book has helped me reframe my money mindset, and ultimately over time it's helping heal my relationship with money. So I'll leave all of his socials and the book linked down below. I think you'll get a ton of value out of it. So friends, those are 10 ways that I've been able to heal my relationship with my finances and ultimately with myself. I hope you got some value out of some of these lessons that I learned, and let me know some ways that you're working on healing your own relationship with money. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you all next Sunday. Bye.